Hey, this is Keith Baldwin. Thanks for joining me on this live broadcast. I'm the founder and co-owner of Baldwin Success Coaching. We help business owners create the team that they've always dreamed of. So today I want to talk a bit about something that's been in the news a lot. I'm sure that you've seen a ton of Facebook posts and so you may be tired of this topic, but it seems to be in everybody's mind, so I want to bring it up. And that is the United Airlines fiasco that has been capturing all of our attention for a long time. I'm sure you've all seen the videos of the paying customer being dragged off the airplane by the security team. You may have seen that the United Airlines stock dropped like $1.4 billion, which seems like a lot of money. And United Airlines has a global black eye, I'm sure after a while this will start to fade away, but this could have very long-term repercussions for United Airlines. So, and I get how we're all so interested in this, and part of it is we just all love we all love a common enemy. In fact, it's a basic human motivation that when we see something, we make some sort of snap decision, and we're real quick to just get on one side, and then over time, I'm sure we're going to hear that there's a lot more to the story. Obviously, things weren't handled well before, during, or after. But what I really want to talk about today is kind of the concept. It's kind of a cliche, but the idea that we all live in a glass house. So how quickly should we be throwing stones at United Airlines? You know, the old cliche, the old quote is, person lives in a glass house shouldn't throw stones. And we all live in a glass house. If we have a business or company, how likely is it, or how sure are we that our team is going to respond in the exact way that we want them to respond when things go bad? Teams really are tested in adversity. They're not tested when things are going great. They're tested when things start to go bad. Hey, Liz, thanks for joining us. And so I want to kind of walk through just, thinking about this United thing that happened and what can we learn about it that we can apply to our business. And this rings true whether or not we own the business or a manager in the business or even as an employee, to think through as a team, how do we make sure that we wow our customers, or when things go bad, that we provide a complimentary, positive experience for a client as best as possible. And I'm going to talk about 3 different areas. So instead of thinking about necessarily United, start thinking about your own business and think about, how sure are you that your clients are getting wowed every time by your team? Or when things go bad, how sure are you that your team is responding in a way that's really positive and reflects the image and the brand and the vision that you have for your company? So I'm going to talk about 3 different areas. I'm going to talk a bit about, just real quickly, about systems and procedures, the team's ability to actually implement those, and then 3, what can we learn when things don't go as well as we want? So first, let's just talk about systems and procedures. And I know this is kind of obvious, but the question is, how much time have you spent really working through the systems and procedures in your company? This is something that can be worked through during your weekly team meetings, but you should really have a system and a way of approaching things anytime there's going to be interactions with customers to make sure it represents your brand. So a great way to start is just grab your phone and just start thinking about what are possibilities of things that may go wrong for clients. There's nothing a client wants, that they want to hear. No client wants to hear that that's just our procedure. But nonetheless, we do need to have some sort of procedures and systems in place so that our teams know how to respond with clients. And so think through all the different areas and the ways that you can make sure you're responding, your team is responding in a really positive way to your clients. So again, as I mentioned, you can just grab your phone during a team meeting, sit down, and just start brainstorming with your team all the different possibilities of ways that your clients may have a negative interaction with your company, but also think about it from the other stand. The other side, what sort of impression do you want them to leave even in the absence of any sort of problem? And start thinking through how you want them to respond. I know several clients I've worked with in the past, they went all the way down to how they answer the phone. I just love one of the responses was, it's a great day to call XYZ business. How may I help you? And so they actually started looking at how do we set that first impression. They had a system in place for how they set positive first impressions with each client, each person, each prospect that came into their business. And so start thinking through all the different ways, things that could go wrong, and how you want somebody to respond. And part of that system is thinking about how low can you push authority down. In the United Airlines situation, I don't really know for sure, but if the frontline gate agent had a large amount of dollar authority, they probably could have resolved that situation and gotten volunteers to get off the plane. So think about your company, your team. How much authority can you push down? Because what often happens with disgruntled customers, disgruntled clients, is that they aren't happy with the first response they get, and so then they get transferred to somebody else, and then they eventually get transferred to somebody else. And as soon as you have a client of yours not get resolved with the first person they're talking to, and they have to go to a second or third layer, which happens far too common, you're starting to lose customer engagement. You're starting to lose client engagement. And so how much authority can you push down so that your frontline people have the ability to properly resolve a client complaint? And then let's just kind of move on to the second piece. How confident are you in your team's ability to respond in a way that reflects your brand? And so let's say you spend a lot of time over this next year and you create systems and procedures to give people some guidelines, and you provide some training about how to resolve issues with clients, how you want them treated, so that you get some consistency in the client experience. But how sure are you that your team members are able to actually implement what you really want to happen? There's one of my favorite quotes is, the problem with communication is the illusion that it occurred. The problem with communication is the illusion that it occurred. And so just think about your team. How sure are you that they really understand the rules and systems and procedures that you have in place? And so this is an area that really needs to be over-communicated. Once you have your systems and procedures lined out, even just starting with the first basic ones that you have, think about, how often can I communicate this to my team in many different formats? And so probably it's going to be in a manual someplace. In weekly meetings, you can ask team members to bring out some things that went well, or the challenges they had, and how they implemented a decision. And make sure you're communicating, in fact, over-communicating how to handle the situations in a way that really reflects your brand. The second thing is to start thinking about training. And think about training in this way. Do your team members know what they should do? Do they know how they should do it? And do they care? And so let's talk about the first one. Do they know what to do? So that goes back to over-communicating the systems and procedures. The second is, do they know how to do it? And so, depending upon your business, there may be some complexities or some issues involved, or they may need to, get additional authority or whatever it is. Making sure that they're well trained and they have the resources necessary so that they can quickly resolve any sort of customer issues. The third thing I want to talk about is, do they care? I was in a store recently and had made a fairly large purchase, and I gave the person a cash and paid for it. And I said thank you because I appreciated the frontline clerk's assistance. And he said, yep. And then looked at the next customer. Okay, so I just gave my money to a business, and I thanked them for me giving my money to them. And his response was, yep. And, I walked away from that business thinking, I'm not really sure that's a business that I want to give money to. There are other businesses just like this where I've had much better experiences. But as I thought more and more about it, I'll bet at the root of that, it comes down to the response that this customer service representative gets whenever they do something well in their company. Because most team members don't get recognized for work well done. In fact, there's this kind of old-fashioned, really old management thought that, why would I compliment somebody for doing work that I paid them to do? And that is so reverse of what it takes to really engage a team. Gallup's research finds that to keep employees engaged, one huge factor in that is that team members want to hear praise for work well done every 7 days. And so start really watching, and I mentioned this in my podcast or in my live video on Tuesday, a couple days ago. Start watching for opportunities to catch people doing things right. Because my guess is this person that I gave my money to that said yep, probably get the same response from their manager whenever they do something well, or maybe they've tried to go above board, do something extra for the company, and may get a nod from the boss, or may get a yep from the boss. And so they've basically just been trained that that's just what you do. And so start thinking about how can you treat your employees in such a way that they're going to be inspired to treat your very best customers at the highest level possible. You know, that's that old quote that we've heard over and over again, that treat your team members just like you want them to treat your very best client. So think about how can you provide them that type of feedback, positive feedback on a consistent basis. And third is something that I learned from one of my mentors, Larry Broughton, with Ugozi. That's YOOGOZI.com. Larry Broughton often talks about this thing called after action review, an AAR. And he's a former Green Beret. After every mission that they went on, they would come back and they would dissect how the mission went. And they would look at what went right, what went wrong, how can we do it better next time. And so I'd suggest incorporating AARs, after action reviews, in all of your interactions with your team members. Start looking at anytime things go really well or things go not so well. Start looking at how can we do this better next time. And this isn't about finger pointing. It's not about going, Joe, you really screwed that up. This is just looking at how can we do this better next time. You know, what did go right? What went wrong? How can we do it better next time? And then this may be reflected back in your systems, right? And so the systems that I talked about and setting up systems and procedures at the very beginning, that's going to be an ever-evolving process, just continually thinking about how do we treat our clients in a way that wows them. So it's not just about how do we provide good customer service, but how do we wow our team members? Wow our team members. I guess that was a little slip, but that's actually is an important piece of it. Wow our team members so that they in turn wow our clients. So just a quick recap. Look at that United episode. Instead of throwing rocks at them or jumping on the bandwagon of how they really screwed that up, start thinking about where might you have that possible problem in your own company, right? So it's unlikely in your business that you're going to have security people dragging clients out of your doors, right? But there may be some things that are happening, like somebody having to talk to 3 levels above the first customer service representative in order to get something resolved. Start looking at where are things in our organization that are causing a negative client experience. You know, it used to be that if somebody had good products, a good service, and a good price, that was a competitive edge. But that's just the entry level to the marketplace now. So having good products, good service, and a good price is really nothing special anymore. I mean, you can go on the internet and find 5 different competitors for what you're doing. So start thinking about and developing in your systems and procedures, what can we do that distinguishes us, separates us from everybody else around us in a way that really, really wows our clients, right? Because that is unusual. To actually look at and consider and develop systems with the idea about, I really want to wow our clients. Like I don't want to just solve them and help solve their problems and help when they're dissatisfied. I want to be preemptive in how I approach this and look at how do I wow them in every single interaction that they have with us. And if we can't wow them, then how do we satisfy them and provide the highest level of service so when they leave, that they're saying, well, I wasn't entirely excited about that, but I feel they did the best for me and I feel satisfied, right? And so hopefully that's going to be the minority of people, because ideally we want to have systems, procedures, and a team that wows our clients. So develop some systems and procedures. Second, thinking about your team. Remember I talked about that you want to think about the idea of treating your team members the way you want them to treat your very best customer. So make sure they know what to do. Over-communicate your systems and the things that you want to make sure they're implementing. Over-communicate those on a consistent basis. There's no time period for this to stop. This is forever, right? And then look at how do you catch them doing things right and provide positive feedback. So when they're doing something really positive, it's not yep. Because if you do that and if you ignore that, that's going to translate to how they interact with your clients. And then third, start establishing some after-action reviews in your weekly team meetings. You just have one team member a week to start with. Just come up with one example of something that went well or something that could have gone better or could have gone better, and then dissect a little bit and look at, what went right, what went wrong, and how can we do this a little better next time. So again, the United episode is going to play out in the press, and in a couple months it's going to basically drift away, and we'll have some other problem that we're going to be angry with some other company or vendor or politician or country or who knows what. So we know that's going to continue, right? That's what the news does. It just continually feeds us some information to get us upset about something. But we can take these lessons and look at our own companies and think about how can we make sure that doesn't happen in our home, in our country, or in our company. How do we make sure that doesn't happen? Okay, so those are just some ideas about how to take some negative press that's playing out and use it for something really positive in the press. Leave me a comment down below. I'm really curious just about, how can you help team members succeed whenever they are placed in an adverse situation? We all know that at times we have problems with clients and that things don't go well. And so how can you make sure to help your team members succeed? And if you are a team member, post down below, what do you need in order to succeed in possible adverse circumstances? So hey, thanks for joining me, and for those of you watching the replay, please leave your comments down below, and love to get your feedback on how else you can take this United lesson and apply it to your business. So have a great week. Take care.